And now,
it's 10 a.m.
Let's just get down to it.
And it's time for your sports fix.
Strap yourselves in, folks.
From two guys who have covered the teams you're passionate about for years.
We are professionals.
This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone. Ben Anderson rolling solo today. Christian Esparza behind the board. Going to be jumping on throughout the show, of course. Coming up here in just a couple of minutes, we're going to get you ready for the NBA draft 2 weeks from tomorrow with one of my favorite people, certainly my favorite draft analyst. Krysten Peek is going to join us coming up here momentarily. And then 11 o'clock, one of my other favorite people, Tim Lacombe, is going to join us talking about the NBA Finals. We'll talk about the Utah Jazz as well. And what he sees from the draft for the Jazz perspective. We'll go a little bigger picture with Krysten, but obviously we'll get an idea of what the Jazz are doing as well and what she thinks could happen for the Jazz coming up at number 5. So excited to talk to Krysten. Coming up with the top 3 stories. We'll have to break down what was a crazy and somewhat unhinged third game of the Stanley Cup playoffs, or Stanley Cup Finals, I should say, last night between Edmonton and Florida, where it looked like the streets of Florida last night. Certainly by the third period, that game had gone completely off the rails. And we'll have to catch up with Cole Bagley before the end of the week and get a breakdown on what he's seeing so far. And then again, we are 2 weeks from Friday, I believe, is the NHL draft. So we are quickly approaching that as well. So we'll have to get you familiar with some of the names that will be in contention for the Utah Mammoth coming up at 4 when they're going to be picking. That'll be before the end of the week, though. So excited to get ready for what should be a busy late June, early July with 2 drafts. We've got Summer League coming up in Salt Lake City on the 5th, 7th and 8th, or 6th, 8th, and 9th after the 4th of July this year for sure. And then the Vegas Summer League as well. So going to be a busy month, not to mention that we've got to sprinkle Big 12 Media Days as well in there in the next month. So going to be a lot to talk about. Not really a slow summer ever. Led by a top 5 pick by the Utah Jazz. Let's welcome in our next guest. You can find her on Twitter at Krysten Peek. You can find her on NBA TV. She's a color analyst for NBA Future Now. You can listen to her on Locked on Big Board. What's going on, Krysten?
Hey, how are you? I am currently in Rock Hill, South Carolina for the NBPA Top 100 camp. So even though it's draft season, it never stops.
Yeah, Krysten, that's always, if I have one complaint, I tune in to get draft stuff from Krysten Peek. I'm like, oh, she's talking about guys for 2029. She's watching these 19, or not even 19-year-olds, like 11-year-olds sometimes. I'm like, oh, she's just so far ahead of me on all of this. It's really impressive. Yeah. So yeah, where are you? What town are you in?
I'm in Rock Hill, South Carolina. It's like 30 minutes outside of Charlotte. And it's the NBPA Top 100 camp. So it's 100 of the top high school players. And some of them are just coming off a gold medal for the U16 FIBA America Cup. Of course, we'll see the MVP of the camp, Nas Anderson. He was incredible. Of course, they, like Team USA runs away with the gold every single year, but he made a massive jump. And then, of course, Marcus Spears Jr., another 2028 draft prospect. So yes, I go way deep. And then after the draft, after New York, I'll fly to Switzerland for the U19 FIBA World Cup, where we'll see BYU star AJ DiBonsa hopefully make the team, pending anything catastrophic, and a long list of really talented players.
We are, like I said, 2 weeks out from tomorrow from the first round of the NBA draft. Outside of the top 2 picks, Cooper Flagg and Dylan Harper, do you feel like there's much shape to this draft? I know we've talked about it being pretty top 4 heavy, but are you confident that you know any other like locked in pick who's going to go 3 or 4 or 5?
No, and this is smoke season, right, Ben? We talk about this every year. So all year it has been Cooper, Dylan, Ace Bailey, and VJ Edgecombe. But now 2 weeks outside the draft, we're starting to hear the name Con Knipple, Cooper Flagg's teammate from Duke, maybe sneak into the conversation at number 5. There's talks of the Spurs possibly trading down with a team that really, really wants Dylan Harper as their franchise point guard, lead guard. So we're starting to hear a lot of that. But I do think it is very possible for Con Knipple to slip inside the top 4. And if you're the Jazz, I mean, there's really only like 3 or 4 players that you really have to look at that 5 position. I know I've talked about the draft starting at number 5, but if Ace Bailey falls, if VJ falls, even Trey Johnson could sneak up there, along with Con Knippel. So, again, I honestly, I said this once before. Yes, the Jazz lost the Cooper Flag sweepstakes, but in this draft particularly, there is a ton of consolation and value in the players projected at the top.
You touched on it there, and on my podcast with Chandler Holt, where we've kind of gone through some of the draft guys who are the popular names right there at 5. We've already talked about 6 or 7 guys, and honestly, it feels like a lot. I don't know if there's actually that many guys that will be in consideration at 5, but correct me. How many do you think legitimately are in the running that could be on the board or could be on the Jazz's radar with that 5th pick?
3 or 4 players. I think they're really honing in on, best available, and you make it work. Obviously, we've heard the name Jeremiah Sears to come in and be that floor general alongside Keontae George. I know Isaiah Collier had a really good season, but when you have the chance to possibly draft a player that is being compared to Trae Young and what he did at Oklahoma and his pre-draft process, they're now calling him Hoodie Jeremiah because he's always working out with a hoodie on with his trainer and agent, Mike Miller. So he's had a really good pre-draft process and, was very instrumental. And he's one of the youngest players in this draft because he did reclassify up a grade. So you're getting more value in drafting a younger player and being able to shape them into your franchise.
I think the name that gets thrown around a lot for the Jazz, if it goes chalk with the top 4 that you've talked about with Cooper Flag 1, Dylan Harper 2, and then some order of Ace Bailey and VJ Edgecombe 3 and 4, a popular name certainly in Utah, listening to fans on Twitter, seems to be Trey Johnson. How firmly is he in the mix for 5? Is there a chance he goes below that, or how far could he fall?
No, I think he's totally in the mix. And what's so funny about Trey is there is nothing that dude loves more than the game of basketball. He's a very simple person. And when you're doing the deep dive of intel, okay, what does he do off the court? What does Trey do? And from all accounts, he just loves to play the game of basketball and, of course, video games. That's kind of they pair hand in hand. But you talk to the Texas coaches. I've talked to his dad extensively. Trey told me that when COVID hit and he was forced just to stay at home and really hone in on his basketball skills, he grew about 3 or 4 inches over the course of a year. And his dad and him were just in the gym relentlessly. And that's where he got that dog mentality. Of course, his dad played first at Texas Tech and then went on to be an All-American. I can't remember the name of the school, but his dad really instilled that into him. So when you are looking at a player that you want to kind of help and bring in, and as you're in the rebuild process, you want someone who is going to give you everything, that dog mentality, night in and night out, regardless of if you're winning or losing. And that's Trey. He was so mad at himself. He hit on, he was one of the best shooters on the court, and he hit on, I think it was 73% of all accumulated shooting drills. And he was so impressive. And I asked him about that. I said, were you pleased with your performance? He said, no, we did a dress rehearsal of the shooting drills the night before, and I hit way more shots. I was pissed. So he has that competitive edge. He's someone that a lot of teams like, and I think he is definitely going to be at play at 5.
Trey, you just mentioned his shooting. Con Knippel's the other really great shooter in this draft. Do you think one of them's a better shooter than the other? Because they shoot different shots.
It's different. I think Con is better in catch and shoot. I think Trey is way better off the dribble in terms of if you need a shot when the shot clock is going down, when the game is on the line, you put the ball in Trey Johnson's hands. Con is he's a better cutter, and I think he reads the defense better in terms of getting to his spots than Trey does.
There's some conversation about Con Knippel, and I think where Jazz fans are maybe a little leery about him is that he's a quote-unquote safe pick, which I think some people think means there's no star upside or no really high-level upside, and it's just a guy who's going to come in and plug and play and be a floor-spacing three-point shooter, and that's kind of all he does. Do you think there's more to his game than that can make him, a top 3 player on a roster?
Absolutely. I don't know what more you want from a guy. He led the EYBL in scoring going into his senior year in high school. And we look at the players that have led the EYBL in scoring. Last year it was Cameron Boozer, who's going to be a top 3 pick in next year's draft. And then it was AJ Dubonsa, who was at the 16U level. And, this year it's Tyron Stokes and Jason Crow Jr. Those are very high-level players. It is very hard to lead the EYBL in scoring, and Con Knippel did it. And so I guess you can call him a safe pick, but he's someone I think, was Was Reed Shepherd a safe pick last year? He was a top 3 pick. We didn't see a lot of him on the court, but I think there is room for growth in Con Knippel's game, especially at 5 in the Jazz, and the way that they're being patient and letting these players develop.
If you want to out anybody, you certainly can, but I will tell you from what I've kind of heard so far, I'm not hearing any real question marks about the guys in this draft. As far as the quality of person, it seems like for the most part, there's not a lot of fear of there's, this bad story that's going to come out, or there's this weird background story. Brandon Miller, obviously with the gun thing and taking the gun to the friend who shot somebody, that was a huge talking point. I don't feel like we've heard much of that, if anything, with guys certainly projected in this top 6 or 7.
No, absolutely not. I mean, these are all really high character players, great kids, players that I've known for a lot of years. And we're not going to hear anything after they're drafted, something, completely bizarre. Because you have to remember, if he had skeletons in their closet, I mean, NBA teams, Ben, they do everything. They talk to the second grade teacher. They talk to the janitor at the high school. Did he thank you after games when you had to pick up trash in the stand? Things like that. So they do their homework, and it's something, of course, I probably would have heard of regardless of, being 2 weeks outside the draft.
Okay, we've talked about all the other guys, but let's talk about Ace Bailey and VJ Edgecombe. I know we've touched on them some. I don't think they've done a lot of workouts for the top teams yet. That comes a little bit later to make sure they avoid injuries and things like that. But where are Ace Bailey and VJ Edgecombe in this process? How confident are you that they're 3 and 4? What's the likelihood that at least one of them is on the board at 5? And at 5, if they do slip, is it a bad sign, or is it somebody you think the Jazz should just run up to the podium and take them?
Yeah, with Ace and VJ over the course of his career has been a slow burn, and we saw him over the back half of the season. Actually, if you had a chance to go see him play at Utah or BYU, I think that 2-game stretch was some of his best 3-point shooting. I think he was 10 for 16 from 3 over the course of 2 games, and that was a big glaring point in his development, especially coming out of high school. And so he's just you look at VJ and you think athletic upside. We already know he's probably one of the most dangerous players in transition. But outside of that, I think he's going to interview, and I think coaches, when they get him in for the few workouts that he is going to have, the coaching staff is going to love his work ethic and what he brings, especially on the defensive end. Just his timing with chase down blocks and how good he is off the block and help side. And with Ace, I mean, he is just a pure scorer. And at his size, I know he's not 6'10". I know a lot of people were up in arms about that, but he is about 6'8", 6'8.5", I don't know. And just what he possesses as a pure scorer, you cannot deny what he did as a high school prospect and what he was able to do on the court. And there was conversation around that maybe he would surpass Cooper Flagg, as the number 1 high school prospect before the season ended. But that didn't happen. He stayed very locked in at number 2. And I think with him, his confidence is through the roof. We saw it during his media availability and the answers he was giving. And that's okay. If you were coming into a situation, if you're sitting at 3 and you are the Philadelphia 76ers, or even 4 with the Charlotte Hornets, you want a guy to come in and have that confidence, because you're not going to get a ton of minutes, in the first unit. So you want a confident player coming in and being able to lead that secondary group. But if he falls to the Jazz, I think if either one of them fall to the Jazz, that's great.
I said with Ace, I think Cody Williams needs 85% more of Ace Bailey's confidence, and maybe Ace needs 15% more of Cody Williams' shyness as far as his his decision on shot making, or shot taking at the very least, because the shot making is certainly there. Okay, context is the hardest part about the NBA draft, in my opinion, which is where a guy went to college, how he was utilized, and if that's going to reflect at all what he does in the NBA. Who had the worst context, or who was in the worst situation that you think may not reflect who they actually will be in the NBA? In this year's draft.
I'll give you 3 names.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll give you 3 names. Carter Bryant, who was at Arizona. He only averaged 7.5 points per game, 6'8" wing. Drake Powell, who disappeared at North Carolina. but has, a 7'1" wingspan. He measured very well at the combine. He's someone that's shooting up draft boards as a 3-and-D prototype. And then Cedric Coward, I know I've talked about him before. Of course, he only played 7 games at Washington State before tearing his labrum, and he's cleared for all full contact in workouts on June 14th. And so he's someone else who measured ridiculously. I think it was 6'7" with a 7'2" wingspan, shot 71% from all of his shots at the combine. So those 3 players, I mean, you didn't see a lot of them in college, but make no mistake that you're going to hear their name called sooner than later on draft night.
Yeah, I watched Drake Powell last night, and you're right. You just didn't see him play at all. He was on the court, and he didn't do anything. It was a little shocking, but you're right. North Carolina has been a bit of a mess for the last couple of years with all of their players. This draft has a lot of interesting bigs in it, and a kind of a different breed of bigs than usual. Maybe other than Common Malawach. You talk about Derek Queen, who I think could be available like 17. He also could go number 6 overall. I don't think that would surprise me. You get guys like Danny Wolf. You've got guys like Maxime Reynaud. You've got Ryan Kalkbrenner. Just like a lot of weirdly skilled big guys that seem like good fits for the modern NBA. Where are you on the big guys in this class and some of those guys who may be on the board at 21 for the Jazz?
I like the bigs in this class because they are all new age versatile bigs. Like they can all, aside from Derek Queen, whose 3-point jump shot looked a little sketchy at the combine, they all have the pick and pop potential, and they all are, by all accounts, pretty mobile. I mean, other than Kaman Malawach, who we saw him go through the drills, the poor step slide drill where you have to sprint, slide, backpedal, slide. I think he had to restart 6 times because he kept knocking over the cone with his long legs. But across the board, I mean, I don't see any glaring issues. Thomas Storber from Georgetown is another name that I'm hearing a lot, a buzzy name that is kind of that teams have really liked in workouts. But Colin Murray-Boyles, who went to Wasatch Academy in Utah and played at South Carolina, he's another one that a lot of teams like, and Rasheer Fleming. So across the board, I mean, the bigs in this draft, there's a lot to like, and there's a lot of potential in what they could be and how mobile and versatile that they can be in the NBA.
Who is the Cam Whitmore of this year's draft who was getting top 5 buzz at one point, ended up like a day or 2 before the draft? I think you were really on top of it, thinking like, Cam Whitmore probably is on the board for the Jazz at 9, and the Jazz pass on him twice, and he falls to, 19-20 to the Rockets. Is there a guy who has a truly enormous draft range that we will not know where he's going, whether it's mid-lottery or, 20s before draft night?
I think the 2 names, and I love both these kids dearly, like they're 2 of my favorite players off the court and people that I have, really gotten a chance to know, but again, I don't know where their draft range would be, is Asa Newell, the freshman out of Georgia. He's a 6'9", stretch 4. And probably Jace Richardson, who had a wonderful season, an excellent season at Michigan State, but he measured at 6'1" with a 6'6" wingspan. So he's probably around a 6'2" combo guard. And so it's difficult to know where teams have those 2 players on their draft boards. And so, at some mock drafts, you see Asa at the back half of the lottery. I've seen Jace at the back half of the lottery, but it would not surprise me if either one of those 2 players slipped to around 18 to 20.
We're talking the NBA draft with Krysten Peek 2 weeks from tomorrow. Yegor Demon is getting buzz as high as 8 to the Brooklyn Nets. I know there's always going to be the talk of the Jazz at 5. I don't get the sense that that's what's going to happen. But then you do see him falling as far as, 18, 19. Do you think that's accurate? And what do you think of Yegor as a draft prospect right now?
I think teams are higher on Yegor than the general draft community consensus. Look, there's no denying what he possesses. He's a 6'9", playmaking, great passing guard. I know his shooting was a little iffy at times during the season. That's something you can fix, and that's something that teams are going to look past. But what he possesses with his size and the way he sees the court and the way he reads the defense in the pick and roll, I think it's going to, cause a team in that late lottery to take a swing on him.
Can you, a guy who I think one of these two players is going to go. The teams are going to have to pick between these two players. It's Yegor, and then it's Kasparas Yakashonis at Illinois, who I think before his arm injury to the first half of the season, if he'd continued to play that way, I think there's a chance he's a top 3 or 4 pick, right? But that second half of the season, he falls off a little bit. The turnovers are pretty horrendous. Where are you on Kasparas Yakashonis? And he seems like he's just been kind of quiet throughout this process for a guy who was once talked about as a top 3 or 4 pick.
It is unbelievable. I wrote about this. It is unbelievable. It's crickets around Kasparas, and we always hear something, right? And so to hear absolutely nothing, it's reminiscent of Tejan Salon last year, where I didn't hear anything about him until the day of the draft, and that the Hornets were actually considering him with the number 6 pick. So I don't know if this is a combination of his people, his agent, his circle, really keeping their cards close to them. Maybe they left Chicago with a promise, and the team that really likes him just not saying any word, not leaking anything, no information, no knowledge of a workout or anything. So I think it's more that. I think there's a team that look, despite your hand injury, despite everything that happened in the season, we really like you. Remember, the Oklahoma City Thunder took Nikola Topic last year when they knew he wasn't going to play the entire season. So especially with the younger one-and-done prospects, they're more looking towards the potential and what they can bring, not necessarily immediately next season, but down the line. And the fact that we have heard nothing about Kasparas is really, really interesting to me.
Yeah, because the talent is there. There's just no question the talent is there, and he's 19, right. And when you watch him play, you can tell he's just played a ton of basketball. He's been a pro in his life before. And honestly, if he ended up at 5, I guess it wouldn't totally shock me. Not that I've heard anything about that point, but he is that type of player. You went pretty viral for your comments about Zach Edey last year on draft night. And I think you said he was the worst top 10 pick in NBA history.
Oh, my God.
And he had an okay rookie season. He wasn't awesome. He wasn't terrible. And now the ankle injuries are kind of everything you fear about a 7'4", 300-pound person. It's just, that's what happens to those guys. Is there a guy who you think could jump up into the top 10 that would really surprise you, but you could see it happening by draft night?
Oh, first of all, let me just go on record saying I was happy for Zach's season. I'm really happy for him. I'm so disappointed about his ankle injury, and I really hope the best for him. This was a hot take that I will never, ever be able to escape. But, going to this draft, is there a player that I could see jumping into the top 10 that just comes out of nowhere? I mean, sure, I guess you could say Drake Powell. Like a team really, really just wants him, and they don't want to gamble with him possibly being there later in the lottery or later in the first round. I could see that. That wouldn't surprise me.
We also have this weird thing now where so many guys, we talked about Demon, we talked about Yakashonis, we have a lot of international players who are coming over and playing college. What about the international class outside of those guys? Because there are 2 Noahs that are going to get drafted in the first round, Noah Penda, Noah Essengay. There are some interesting names. Ben Sarafska out there who's going to get drafted. Joan Berger is going to get drafted. What do you think of this group?
Okay, I want to take back my answer. A player that would surprise, I think, everyone, Nolan Traore. He's a 6'4" point guard. He's someone that coming into this season, he plays over in France. He was a projected lottery pick, and then he fell off. He didn't shoot the ball very well. But what do we see, especially in French playoff basketball, is that teams have added time to be able to go back and reevaluate these players. Nolan Traore has been fantastic. He doesn't even look like the same player he was in the beginning of the season, and he is just shooting up in terms of interest and intrigue, and he's someone that could really come into become a lottery pick. And then, of course, Johan Berenger, another player that a lot of teams like in that late lottery slot. The international talent is here to stay. This draft is no different from what we saw the previous 3 years in the draft, and the talent coming over from overseas. The playing field is just leveling off, and it's really exciting to see.
It's amazing how many of these guys you click on and you see France by their nationality.
Yeah.
Everything seems to be going through France right now. Is that accurate as far as where the young talent is coming from? And then because of the Wemby factor, I mean, and look, it's been going on since Tony Parker and Boris Diaw and Rudy Gobert. We've seen it for a while. Is there a desire to be in tight from these teams with the French because of how much talent is coming out of that country and the idea that the future, the league is going to have to really have good relationships with these French national teams, et cetera, to make sure that they're getting the right intel? Is that actually a thing?
It is a thing. And, you talk to the younger players that came after Wemby, like Zachary Richelet told me last year. He said, we played against Wemby. Nolan Traore has said the same thing. I've grown up. I've played against Wemby. I've held my own. And seeing what he's doing in the league gives us all confidence that we can do that too. We can go over to the NBA. And so it's like this mental switch where the NBA has been this far-fetched dream for all these young French talented players. But then when they look back and they say, oh, wait, hold on. Wemby was number one. Zachary Richelet was number one. I competed with him. I competed at the same level. I can be just as effective. And it's really made a switch. And I think in turn, the development in France has really turned up. And especially, I've called a few of the French games this year. I called the Young Stars All-Star game with Noah Penda. And the fans are there. AJ Dibonsa made the trip over to France, and he was at that game. Of course, the Spurs were also playing over in France the very next day, so that helped. But just the eyeballs and just I think the fanfare of these French prospects has really picked up in the last 3 or 4 years.
Find her on Twitter at Krysten Peek. Catch all of her NBA draft coverage online, NBA Future Now, and on the NBA app. And you can also watch her on NBA TV. Krysten, great stuff as always. I hope we can catch up one more time before the draft.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ben.
There she is, Krysten Peek, giving us a breakdown on everybody seemingly in the draft there, including names at 5 for the Jazz, some names at 21, and kind of the strong position groups, both internationally and then actually by position here. Coming up in the NBA draft 2 weeks from tomorrow. We'll talk a little bit more about the draft coming up with Tim Lacombe at 11. Also get a breakdown on the finals. Stick around. More Jake and Ben coming up next. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
This is DJ and PK.
Joined now by Danny Ainge, Utah Jazz CEO. You know, the great thing about the Ainge family is they say stuff that takes on a life of its own. Austin, at his press conference, because he's an Ainge and he can't help himself, gets the tank question and says, you won't see that this year. Where should fans be setting their expectations beyond the word tanking?
I think the fans should be excited about the guys that we have and how they're developing and whatever pieces that are put together in this offseason with the team. It'll be more fun this year. And I really believe that, because the players are not only getting better and growing, but I think the coaches are getting to understand one another. There's some continuity with the group here, and it'd be the second year as opposed to a first year. And I do see the improvement. I'm excited for this year, regardless of what buzzwords we want to use. I'm looking forward to this upcoming year.
Catch DJ and PK mornings from 6 to 10 on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.